Almost a year has passed since Sekai 0904 Silikutang found Inadequence's Giratina origin in Honolulu, Hawaii, to reward Pokémon GO's Hong Kong hero with the title of World Champion. We've witnessed 1 year of memorable breakout moments, captivating comeback stories, and superstars from all continents staking their claim, vying to be the very best like no one ever was. We followed an ever-developing meta from small adjustments to tectonic shifts. Now, in Anaheim, California, Dusclops has an eye on the prize, while Credilli seems ready to rock the biggest of stages. The 2025 Pokémon GO World Championships are upon us, and a new champion is about to be crowned. So what better time for the Show 6 podcast to come out of hibernation to bring you all our takes on what to expect for the dramatic conclusion of this year's Play Pokémon Championship Series. At this point, you will know the catchphrase, so lock in, good luck, and have fun. So, we're back. I am back. My name is Zzweilous. Speedy's Chief 2 is also here with us. How are you doing, Speedy? I feel like we haven't really heard from each other in a long while.
It's been a nice break. We were just talking about before we press record that we know the break is coming. We know we're going to get a month and a half to 2 months apart, no community events, no tournaments, no storylines to follow. We know it's coming, but it still feels so strange to actually get through it. And I'm honestly a bit relieved that we have Worlds coming up. And speaking of feeling relieved, I'm relieved that you had an intro as well, because I so selfishly ask ZZ for intros, but I feel like it's not so selfish because I do think you do such a good job. I'm sure everyone enjoys listening to them. Minus the low hanging fruits and the puns that
you asked
occur.
like 7 minutes before we started the recording or scheduled to start the recording, and I had nothing at that point. So this was like very much improvised, but I feel like it's been getting us into the mood of this actually being the culmination of essentially like 12 months of tournaments, of battles, of storylines, and yeah, I feel like a lot of just like very, very interesting pathways of competitors are just like finding that one spot where everything's going to go down in a stadium nonetheless. Like I've heard that day 3 of the Anaheim competition is going to be held in a stadium, so it's really like one of those anime situations where like you had the journey, right? Like Ash traveling through the lands with all his friends and creatures by his side, and now you actually step inside the arena and you have to fight the other giants, like the other memorable characters that you may or may not know from the video games. So like our Pokemon Go competitors are somewhat like those people, aren't they? Like if you're a competitor from Europe and all of a sudden you get to face players like Elam or Mato Galde at the World Championships, that must be exciting. That must feel special.
I've had almost like a poem kind of half written in my head for quite a while, and it basically comes down to what you're getting at. Like it's nice to believe in something like fate. I do believe that some people, not to be too punny and direct, but they have faith in the concept of fate because it kind of takes the responsibility of life out of their hands, and there's already some kind of like predisposition path they can follow, something they can trust in, something that is going to lead them to a good place no matter what. And I don't want to say it's fate, but as a future world champion, you just have to reflect about the first time you spun a Pokestop, or the first time you caught a Pokemon, or the first GBL battle you ever did. And if you could like draw a straight line of events that led up to this world championship, it would feel like fate. And I think a lot of these trainers, have their own vision of how this is going to go in their minds. But yeah, you never know until you get there. And there's lots of unexpected things along the way, but we share a similar sentiment.
This is very, very funny of you to say because, as you know, I had like this one tournament that I won. It's been 2 years at this point, but the Barcelona special event, and I did that with a Pelipper on my team. and that Pelipper was caught at 1499 CP, fully evolved already, and it turned out to be the rank 1. And I shouted out that this could be the rank 1 before even catching it, before even checking the IVs. So ever since that moment, I refer to that Pelipper as Destiny Pelipper, because it was just fate, right? And then it actually ended up on the one team that ever won a thing for me. So yeah, like maybe there is some truth to what you just said, that there could be like those moments, those
Yeah.
yeah, like fateful paths that everybody
I
is
actually
on.
didn't know. I actually did not know that story. That's actually that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like every champion feels it in their bones, especially after a few rounds of the tournament, and they start to feel like they're in a groove and things are working. You can just feel like you're. It's less that you're actually working towards something. It's just that things are sort of happening and they keep on happening. And I'm sure you felt that when you won in Barcelona, that you were like, oh, things are just clicking. They're working really well. And Worlds is always fun because you basically have 200 plus people who they all think everything's clicking, everything's working, and yeah, it's a shame that we only get one world champion, but they are very, very well deserved, of course. ZZ, we've got an awesome episode. It's going to be similar to what we did last year. You and I have been chatting back and forth about topics and what we're going to cover. So obviously, we're going to review players. We've got a few really fun categories that we're going to go over. But the full run of the show is that we're going to talk first, just briefly, about the PJCS because we didn't do a recap for that one. So there were some notes I wanted to mention. That'll lead us into a meta discussion. I've heard rumors that ZZ hates the current meta. Personally, I think it's pretty fun, although I think we both share a disdain for Dedenne. That Pokemon is super, super annoying. Then we'll talk about our players, how we categorize them. We've got 3 picks for various different slots, so you definitely want to tune in for that, see if ZZ and I agree. Then we'll talk about the most important event in the game that's going to be happening for Worlds, especially if you like Shadow Pokemon. So let's go ahead and kick things off with the PJCS. And I'm just going to start right out of the gate here, ZZ. You and I might have failed in our journalistic responsibilities. And I alluded this to you before we started, but hear me out. We've talked about trainers from the TPC region competing at TPCI events. Most notably, these are going to be trainers that are competing in Australia, whether it's Melbourne, Brisbane, whatever it might be. But there was another Japanese trainer that actually came quite close to winning an event earlier this year, and they were actually on the Western Hemisphere when they did it, which is pretty remarkable. Now, if I can find in my notes, that trainer actually finished 3rd overall at the PJCS this year. That was KAG MPWTPD. CAG MPWT, I guess we could say. What I didn't
Yeah, not very
realize,
easy to pronounce, but certainly
yeah,
somebody that, like, I don't know, like, it's been a while since we talked about this, but I
mhm.
think that must have been like the San Juan special event. Was it like the Puerto Rican one? I feel as if that was the one that Pocket took, right?
Yes, CAG MP faced Pocket in the grand finals of the Puerto Rico special event earlier this season. So we had a trainer from TPC, not Choose, not Pokemon Maker, not these trainers that are runner up and champions in OC, but actually a player from Japan came over to Puerto Rico and almost won an event there, which was very early on in the season. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this or is this not as big of a deal as I'm making it, but I feel like this went past us, Zzweilous. I feel like this passed us by.
Did we talk about that at the time, like during the Puerto Rico recap episode, which like obviously probably had more events than just that to recap, but yeah, I feel like we did definitely like talk about it in a more pronounced fashion when we discussed the Australian regionals, because it's like, oh, you're defending your home turf, whereas Puerto Rico, like it's like kind of like an in-between zone, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a special event. It's technically North America. It's not a state, but it is the United States. Um, it's like
Yeah.
it's always difficult to place. People travel there because it's like a nice place to travel to, but people don't really organically just go there because they happen to live in the area because it's
Mm-hmm.
not mainland US. So yeah, it's like always like one of those like a little bit out of like not really fitting into any category, but yeah,
It
it's
kind of
definitely
I agree with you. It kind of reminds me of the South Africa tournaments. Like people will go there specifically to pick up a world's invite or to get points or whatever it might be, but it's not something that's like, oh, in the general discourse, we don't batch it together with the larger events in NAEU, LATAM, etc. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. But again, this has been a long season. If you remember, this is still the same season where Lyle Jeffs won Louisville with Toxapex, Shadow Kenta Marowak. Tauntaun won an event with Alolan Raticate. We had in
I
Sacramento,
haven't forgotten
SJ.
that one.
I know. That one, sorry, too soon, too soon.
Yeah, it's
Sacramento,
actually like at this point, like everybody knows.
in Sacramento, we had SJ taking down Out of Pocket in the grand finals, both of them playing Alolan Sandslash and Shadow Kanto Marowak yet again. And it feels like, and then you go back to the first tournament of the season with Wadaj winning Baltimore with that freaking chestnut. All right. It's been a long road this past year, and it is easy to overlook some things here and there. But
We are only 1 month away from the Dodge winning Pittsburgh, so it's like, life comes at you fast.
exactly, it's like
Well,
clockwork every season. But yeah, I just want to say that CAG MP did finish third overall at the PJCS. I hope that they will be at Worlds. I believe they will. Salted Koji is your PJCS champion. They were running Primeape with Shadow Scizor, Unova Stunfisk, Azumarill, as well as Cradilly and Mandibuzz. But I have a couple of notes here. Uh, Salted Koji took on Kento Sarunori in the grand finals. And this to me, I watched back the footage, this felt like an example of not being ready for Shadow Scizor. And this is definitely a theme we're going to talk about in the meta discussion, in the player outlook. Not being ready for Shadow Scizor or Dedenne, I think, is like a death sentence in this meta. You have to be able to rein those Pokemon in. Koji's Cradilly was actually purified and running Bullet Seed. Believe it or not, it was not Acid Cradilly, which is pretty amazing. Koji's Primeape was running Rage Fist in close combat, which does check out because it is a regular non-Shadow Primeape. Um, and then for top eights, I want to say that Earth Colors, who I believe came top 5, was running Acid Cradilly. Their fortress was Bug Bite, Rock Tomb, and Sand Tomb, which I think is the standard these days. CAG MP, who finished third overall, believe it or not, was running Lantern with Water Gun. Then we had Naman Kichi with fourth place running the Zzweilous special G Weezing with Sludge and Brutal Swing. So a couple of interesting meta notes. And I know that the TPC tournaments are always a little bit off meta, not what we really expect, but I do think it does inform the world's meta coming into the event.
honestly, the most fascinating thing looking at the top 8 from the PJCS is that we see 2 dragons, if I'm not mistaken, because now Monkichi also had a Shadow Dragonite on their team. And
Mm-hmm.
Watagashi 236 coming like 8th or tied 7th. I don't actually
Mm-hmm.
know how the exact format was. They had the Komo-O, which recently received Clanging Scales as a Community Day move, which is just about the strongest charge attack in the game. So definitely
Mm-hmm.
a very spicy, a very off-meta pick. But yeah, the PJCS, like, definitely a showcase of creative team building and
Mm-hmm.
also our very last snapshot into what the actual tournament meta looks like, because we have been on a hiatus. We only had practice tournaments, and even those have like kind of stopped for about a month before they
Mm-hmm.
recently picked back up again. And yeah, if you look at what we've been seeing at the PJCS, I feel like we are kind of noticing a pattern with Shadow Scizor being on 5 out of the top 8 teams,
Mm-hmm.
with Dusclops being also on 5 teams, if I'm seeing that correctly, and
Mm-hmm.
with Credilli actually being on 7 different teams. Mandibus on 6. One team has a Gmoltres, which is essentially a Mandibus. So yeah, we are seeing some themes where you have the Dark Flyers, you have the Ghost type as like kind of your neutral Pokemon, and you have the Credilli because the Credilli is one of the Pokemon that does the best job at keeping Dedenne at bay. And I must say, it did a fantastic job in Japan because there are
Mm-hmm.
actually 0 Dedenne in top 8, which is a
Nice.
very stark departure from the North American International Championships, where you had a Dedenne
Mm-hmm.
on both sides of the grand finals.
Something interesting as well is when I created my own spreadsheet for the season, I always try to slot things into certain categories. You have a safe swap, you have a ground type, you usually have a flying type or an anti grass. And this has changed over the seasons as the roles adjust to the current meta. But what I'm noticing, especially in the PJCS, is the lack of Lapras. We see one Lapras, right? And if you look at the Sims, you've got Lapras baiting Sparkling Aria, connecting with Ice Beam or Skull Bash in so many matchups. It's a very bulky Pokemon. It's got great balance with fast and charge attack pressure. But at the same time, what's really pushed this Pokemon out is something that I personally experienced in NAIC, is that those Psy waves being double resisted by something like Mandibuzz or Galarian Moltres, it is really, really punishing. And if you are locked into one of those matchups, it suddenly does not feel favorable. And then when you have another bulky Pokemon to work through, like a Dusclops or a Cradily, it just puts a lot of pressure on Lapras to succeed. And I think this is something we're going to see going into Worlds as well, is a general lack of Lapras, maybe a pivot back towards Azumarill, just because Mandibuzz and Galarian Moltres are so popular. I mean, you mentioned the Cradilies. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Mandibuzz and 1 Galarian Moltres out of the top 8 teams at PJCS, which I think the Dark Flyers are here to stay.
Yeah, so this is something very interesting, and actually, like one of the PV poke tabs that I currently have open is Lapras with Ice Beam versus Lapras with Skull Bash into the current top meta, just to see like how the matchups flip in The Sims. And after NEIC, I actually kind of expected to see Itzaxon's Skull Bash Lapras pick up in popularity, just because it was crucial for him to win the mirror, to have like a safe Pokemon into those bulky waters. And even against the Credilli, you live a charge attack, you outpace, and if the Credilli isn't careful enough, you may be able to put it into a range where two Sparkling Arias and the Psywaves could pick up the knockout.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt as if things were tilting more towards the Skull Bash as the secondary move. But with how ubiquitous, especially Mandibus is, I feel like that's the more popular choice, which
Yeah.
is good for Lapras because honestly, Mandibus is slower. It has less fast move pressure. It is a lot bulkier, but it's a little more exploitable than the Galarian Moltres, where if you just sit there and get sucker punched all the way down, that's probably not a great time as a Lapras. Whereas against Mandibus, at least you have time, right? Like you can
Yeah.
maybe wait for the Switch Cloud to come back up, or if shields are down, you may be able to land an Ice Beam to do probably above 50% damage.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, especially because of that matchup, I feel as if um, even though there hasn't really been uh, any tournaments besides the PGCS since NEIC, we've already gone from originally Ice Beam Lapras to Skull Bash Lapras influenced by Axon, back to Ice Beam Lapras just in the practice because there's just so many Dark Flyers and you want to be ready for them, especially like the Mandibus where you actually have some counterplay.
I agree. Speaking of dark types, I do see 2 Greninjas also at PJCS. As someone familiar with Greninja, thoughts on that Pokemon going into the World Championships?
I think it's worse. I think it's worse than
What?
it was at the NEIC. And that
Why?
has one particular reason, and that is that the ground type of choice has been flipping from Diggersby to Shadow Kanto Marowak more and more. Like, you're still seeing one Diggersby in the top 8 at the PJCS, but you're also seeing 3 Shadow Kanto Marowak. And the problem with Greninja is that despite its fantastic pacing, it will not ever reach 3 charge attacks if the Kantomaru commits to the Mud Slap down. And yeah, that's just like a really dire matchup for you, even though you're the water type doing water damage consistently. But the difference in stat product just makes it a really tough time for Greninja. And not being able to break up those um, Drapion, Dusclops, and Diggersby cores, and instead having to deal with the Pokemon that you can beat, but not in all shield scenarios with the
Mhm.
Marowak. I think that is going to make it a lot less safe to bring Greninja. And yeah, besides that, obviously there's also the Araquanid that took NEIC in the hands of its accent, where maybe some people feel like that's still a strategy that they could employ, which then also would spell disaster for Greninja.
True. Okay. I understand your points. There's one Pokemon that you mentioned just kind of offhandedly, and I'm shocked to not see it on more teams here. But Shadow Drapion is only on Moneymaker's team in the top 8 of the PJCS. Is this due to like the rise in the Shadow Kanto Marowak? Because there's still lots of targets. I mean, there's more Zoom than before. You have Dusclops on so many teams. It feels like as a neutral Pokemon, uh, Shadow Drapion still looks really strong.
I think it is still strong, and I would be surprised if I didn't see Shadow Drapion within the I think top 8 is a fair shout. I think it's probably
Yeah.
still going to be top 8 most used at Worlds. Probably not top 4, but top 8 I think is fairly realistic. But Shadow Drapion has some issues, right? Because you've mentioned that Sorted Koji actually opted for the Bullet Seed Cradily, which does make
Mhm.
sense in some matchups, like especially Lapras, especially something like Greninja, where you, I think, no longer lose the two shields, or also Kanto Marowak, which just becomes a lot more safe with that um, consistent, super effective damage. But what is more common right now is actually the acid variant of Cradily. And the acid variant of Cradily actually can force swap against Shadow Drapion. And if you are a Shadow Drapion and the main grass type that does resisted fast move damage into you still takes swap against you, that's not a great spot to be in. Then there's the problem with counter swapping into a Shadow Dusclops, because the Shadow or like even the regular Dusclops, I think, is able to win the two shield scenario just because of
Mhm.
its bulk and its pacing. So if it lives a crunch and gets to two attacks, then with the axes and the two shields, it's just not fun. Um, and yeah, there's fewer Azu. Like you always had the Azumarill Shadow Drapion core, which used to be like the core feature of Pokemon Go PvP as a whole for like 9 months straight. But
Yeah.
that's not really a thing anymore. Then there's Lapras, where okay, you have play, but also you don't get the bulk point against the Psywave, so it's not really like you resist it all that much. Then there's Shadow Scizor, which just
Mhm.
sees you as an opportunity to get a ton of energy and like shielding ones, facilitating a farm down. There's Tinkaton Rising, which is one of the hardest counters that you could possibly see. So um, yeah, between that and also Mandibus with Air Slash having a fairly comfortable matchup into you,
Mhm.
Shadow Drapion isn't in the greatest spot. Like it just
Mhm.
has too many loose conditions against too many things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say that makes sense. We've been kind of poking around at some of these picks for the PJCS. I'm not sure if there are any other notes that you want to add. The last thing I'll say is just a logistical thing. So, given the US's very tricky visa requirements based on country of origin, I am very happy to have learned that Japan is actually part of the waiver program, and trainers from Japan will be allowed to enter the US for short stays for tourism purposes. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, we have as many of these talented trainers from Japan able to attend as possible. And then, wishing on a star that one day trainers from LATAM would also get the chance they deserve to come in and compete and not have to jump through all these ridiculous hoops with our visa
Yes.
program. That's all I want to say. I don't want to get too much into politics on the show, but it is really really sad when very talented trainers can't attend the World Championships. ZZ, you posted a tier list, and these are some meta Pokemon that you reviewed. I've got a few bones to pick with you because there are some things here on the list that I just simply do not agree with. We're gonna have the visual
Please
aid
do.
up. We're gonna have the visual aid up on the podcast as well. This is not meant to be a ZZ interrogation, but it is quickly becoming one. So I guess we should get right into it. Um, S tier, which is best. This you categorize this as top threat or neutral staple. You've got four picks. You've got Cradily, Dusclops, Dedenne, and Scizor. Personally, I would just do a little bit of shuffling here. I would still have Cradily at number one. I'd have Dusclops number two due to its neutral capability. Scizor's an easy third spot here. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. Dedenne is just too matchup dependent, in my opinion. I tried practicing with it before NAIC. Either you're feasting on Azumarill Mandibuzz or you are being absolutely demolished by Diggersby, Shadowcat, and Marowak. It's way too polarizing to be in this tier. And I think that it's powerful, it's strong, but I do not agree with it being this high.
I think this has to do with what I'm trying to express with the tiering that I chose, because this is not just like listing the Pokemon from strongest to weakest, but I think this list kind of tries to explain what is most important to keep in mind, because
Mm,
I feel as if Dedenne specifically, is one of the Pokemon that you are very prone to build weak to, but you also like it's one of the Pokemon where you can afford to build weak to it the least, because
mm.
if it ever gets locked into a positive matchup, and maybe if you go ABA to it, then
Ooh.
the Dedenne will put you on the back foot so much that it's probably impossible to recover from it. So I feel like so that's why I call it top threat or neutral staple. I think the neutral staples are Credilli and Dusclops, who are,
Mm,
I think, the most common Pokemon that I have seen in practice, and also two of the Pokemon that have the most neutral play into most situations, not all situations, but most situations. Whereas with Dedenne and Scizor, I think those Pokemon are the two that you really need to keep in mind when um, combining six Pokemon to a team. Because
mhm,
if you don't have enough either strict counters or at least neutral play into these, um, and this is also part of the reason why I don't really like the meta. Like, if you don't account for those two threats, you will be in a position where you just have to guess your opponent's line and hope to not get RPS like much much quicker than you want to.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, like you can avoid those scenarios, but you have to make sure that you have the tools to avoid them already at the team building stage. Like if you build a team that looks perfectly neutral into 95% of the meta, but that doesn't account for those two, you will be in trouble.
Yeah, I could not have said it better. Like the SpongeBob meme where SpongeBob has the binoculars and he's shouting to Patrick. He says, "Write that down. Write that down." That's honestly what everyone should be doing right now. Maybe if I can find the sound clip, I'll put it into the podcast. Okay. I understand your point. I understand your reasoning. Let's move on to the next tier. We've got common picks. Is this one ranked in terms of prominence from left to right,
Mm,
more or
for the
less?
most part, like more or less is what I would say. Like it's definitely like more common on the left. I felt as if Tinkaton was a breakout star in practice. Whereas like you see on the very right, there is the Shadow Drapion. I still believe that it will be like on this list, it's like in like 13th place or something. I think
Mm-hmm.
because some of the Pokemon ahead of it will compete for a spot on the roster, it may be a little more common. But I personally am just not a huge believer in Shadow Drapion as of now, so it ranks dead last in this category.
Okay. So for all of our listeners who are just listening to the audio version, the next tier, we're going to see Tinkaton, Mandibuzz, Lapras, Quagsire, Kanto Marowak, Primeape, Annihilate, Galarian Corsola, and Drapion. So I'm going to agree with you on Drapion being near the back, but I do not know, pardon me, but what you were smoking putting Tinkaton number one. All right. Tinkaton, this is a Mandibuzz own slot, right? I think Mandibuzz easily number one here. Shadow Quagsire. I actually did a Candle Cult practice tournament yesterday. I saw way more Shadow Quag than I expected, and I do think it has the capability to beat Pokemon like Scizor and Dedenne. I mean, it comes down to basically a knife fight when that Scizor has the energy for the Trailblaze, but the Shadow Quagsire outpaces Scizor, and it is going to. The matchup gets worse for Scizor the longer the game goes on, the longer the battle goes on, I should say. So Mandibuzz, definitely number one overall pick for me in this category. You've got Lapras third. We got to slide Lapras down next to to Drapion here. It just has to go further down the list. Quagsire, I think, is a good placement. Kanto Marowak is a good placement. Primeape, I think, is very, very good. Annihilate, for me, would slide down to the next tier. It just can't be up here
Oh, interesting.
when it deals with so many Dusclops, so many Galarian Corsola, so many Mandibuzz, so many Dedenne. There are many, many obstacles. And yeah, you can punch your way through a Cradily. You can, annihilate neutral matchups. You can Rage Fist, whatever. I think its ghost typing betrays it, and Primeape is definitely superior. Galarian Corsola, I absolutely adore. I think that's a great spot for it. But the biggest insult of all to me here, ZZ, is that on this second tier list, or the second tier of the list, so to speak, you do not have a Azumarill here. You have a Azumarill in the tier below it. And I think that is blasphemous on a scale that I have not encountered in a long time, because Azumarill, just when you're not ready for it, is when it's better than ever.
So let's take another look at the name of the tier. The second tier is called Common Pick. So this tier is kind of based on how frequently those Pokemon are used. And if we're being perfectly honest, then Azumarill is just not that popular right now. I entered a practice tournament just the other day with an Azumarill on my team, and I still believe that it is viable because obviously Azumarill is one of the bulkiest Pokemon that you could use, so it always will um, give you some way to sponge some damage here and there. It is a Pokemon that functions as a very hard Mandibuzz counter. It is a Pokemon that helps you out against fighters, especially Annihilate. Primeape does have win conditions, but Azumarill is great at shutting down Annihilate, and it's also a Pokemon that doesn't really have to fear Kanto Marowak's energy edge as much, whereas other water types such as Shadow Quagsire doesn't quite have the bulk. Lapras can take super effective from Rock Slide, and a Pokemon like Blastoise just doesn't really do any fast move damage with its rollout. So all of those matchups are a little shaky, whereas Azumarill is still fairly good into the Kanto Marowak. But I think what has been happening is that Azumarill is kind of being power crept by its poor pacing. Because you still need 5 bubbles to even get to a non-stab Ice Beam.
Mm-hmm.
And in this meta, with how quickly a Dusclops gets to its Shadow Punches, with how quickly a Dedenne is to its Parabolic Charge, like, Azumarill outpaces nothing. There's a lot of Pokemon that can just buff themselves, whether it be a Trailblaze from a Scizor or a Parabolic Charge from a Dedenne, before you even get to do a move at it. And therefore, I feel as if it's like it needs to be very carefully positioned and isn't nearly as spammable as it used to be. And therefore, I felt as if I wanted to put it a little lower on the list.
Yeah, so you make some good points. If there's more Cradily, if there's more Dedenne, if there are more hard answers, I do think Azumarill's viability is reduced a little bit. Personally, I think it's being slept on a little bit here as well, just because, for example, if Mandibuzz is so prominent, I mean, Azumarill is one of the only Pokemon outside of maybe Cradily that just locks down that matchup, and you can leave with energy to spare. Azumarill is still a very good wedge, as you referred to. It's very bulky. It's very, it stays in matchups a long time, which can also be a negative. But yeah, I don't know. I think that people are sleeping on it a little bit, but for example, when your ground type target becomes a lot softer, switching from Diggersby Claydol over to Shadow Cancer Marowak, and Ice Beam plus some bubbles is going to get the job done. When your two best fighters get one shot by Azumarill's Play Rough, I think there's a lot of play for it there as well, no pun intended. And then when you have less Drapion, when you have less, other poison types like Clodsire in the meta, I think Azumarill, its viability goes up. And also to your point about Annihilate, or to our point, we were discussing Annihilate. I don't see it in this tier at all. The more I look at it, because in a meta where you don't have as many Diggersby, as many Drapion as before, do you want Annihilate getting to the Rage Fist pretty slow, getting to the Ice Punch even more slowly? Or do you want 10 turn spammy Karate Chop Ice Punch from Primeape every time? Because an Ice Punch will basically one-shot a Shadow Canto Marowak after the Karate Chop damage. And it gives you just, I don't know, I think it's just superior coverage. So that's just my
So
take.
I personally I love Annihilate the concept. I think it's a very cool Pokemon. I think the typing combination is so unique. And I was really excited for its arrival in Pokemon Go. I've never been the biggest fan of how Annihilate plays in game. I think it used to be very strong. It's not as strong anymore. It just
Mhm.
never really suited my playstyle. I just saw a decent amount of people still use it. And I think the reason for that is twofold because on the one hand, Annihilate actually out damages Shadow Scizor in the head to head, whereas Primeape, especially Shadow Primeape, is just in a really bad position against Scizor because Shadow Primeape, the Scissor can just shield once and farm all the way down.
Yeah.
Um, and also, if you are in that matchup with the Annihilate against the Primeape, that's also favorable for the Annihilate in most scenarios. So I see why there are reasons to still use it. Also, double resisting Fury Cutters and Bug Bites is pretty valuable. Being generally a little bulkier than Primeape is quite valuable. But I would also agree that out of the fighters currently available, Annihilate is the most feast or famine of them all, just because of that Dusclops matchup and just not being like it. Even if you get it a shield advantage, Dusclops will get to two Shadow Punches before you get to two Rage Fists, and
Yeah.
the Dusclops will have no problem shrugging off the first Rage Fist. So it's a fairly delicate Pokemon. I still feel as if it's common enough to warrant a place in that list, maybe on the lower end of it, but yeah, I do see the point to some degree. Um, One Pokemon in this list that I do want to talk about, and also
Sure.
like in the context of Azumarill maybe, is the Tinkaton, because I feel like we have three fairies really competing for that fairy type slot. The okay, how do we hard counter Mandibus type
Mhm.
of slot? And I think originally Dedenne was just the top dog, was like the Pokemon that you wanted to have because it just feels so neutrally strong. And if you look at the Sims, it beats the most Pokemon out of all Pokemon essentially. So yeah, it's very difficult to not build weak to Dedenne. But it also has a huge target on its back, just because it could be so disastrous if you don't account for Dedenne. So the number of Dedenne actually has gone down. There's mostly fewer Dedenne now than there are Tinkaton. Um, and Tinkaton is like less oppressive, more neutral, but most importantly, it is less bad into Credilli, which is essentially the main counter next to ground types that people bring to prepare for Dedenne. So Tinkaton essentially exploits that tendency of everybody to just bring their Credilli in anticipation of Dedenne, while still fulfilling a lot of the roles that normally the Dedenne would take on. Like it resists the Psywaves of Lapras and has a decent
Mhm.
matchup there. It's obviously a very hard answer to Dark Flyers, and it also has decent play against the fighting types, even though it's not as reliable maybe as Dedenne could be in some situations. And it also, like the nice thing about Tinkaton is that it just comes as a bulky Pokemon out of the gate. Um, Whereas Dedenne needs to land a parabolic charge to achieve a similar bulk. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like those two have like kind of been competing for the top fairy spot, but both of them share the weakness to ground type still, which is where the Azumarill could come in, because if you like there's a ground and there's a Credilli on essentially every team to prepare for Dedenne. Now you can bring Tinkaton to make it so people feel stupid for bringing the Credilli, or you can bring Azu so people feel stupid for bringing the ground. It's like one or the other, but
Mm.
people have been opting for Tinkaton more
Interesting. I don't know if I buy it. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if you convinced me. It was a valiant effort.
often.
I'm going to need everyone in the comments for the YouTube video to weigh in, but please continue.
I will say that I have been playing devil's advocate a little here because I am personally not a huge Tinkaton believer. I feel as if,
Mm.
like, obviously it's nice to have
The
bench
truth
pressure,
comes out.
but um, it also, like, not only does it compete for the fairy type role, but it also competes for the steel type role. Because Pokemon like maybe a Talonflame that people use to prepare for Shadow Scizor would also counter Tinkaton. But I think you get a lot more upside from a well played Shadow Scizor than you would get from a Tinkaton. I just feel as if that Pokemon has a higher ceiling, and that if you only bring one of them, which is likely because they do share some weaknesses, then you would likely be better off with the Shadow Scizor.
Mhm.
But I do understand if you say that, oh, like I want the bulk from the Tinkaton because maybe I have another squishy Pokemon that I want to save shields for.
Okay. Interesting. Fair. This actually leads us really well into the next tier of Pokemon that you have here. So we've already reviewed the top threats and neutral staples. We took a look at the common picks, of which Tinkaton inexplicably led the pack. Now we're going to go into the viable options. And the first pick you have in the viable options slot is Talonflame. And this is like this is the biggest distinction, right, between the Dedenne versus Tinkaton debate that we were just going over, is that one of those two fairies can actually do something against Talonflame. The other one is helpless and absolutely gets annihilated. But I'll just list off these picks real quick so people can start to visualize them if they don't have the visual aid. In our viable options slot, we've got Talonflame, Galarian Moltres, Azumarill, inexplicably, Blastoise, Fortress, Sableye, Unova Stunfisk, Diggersby, Gligar, Greninja, Golisopod, Araquanid, and Toadscruel. So there's a lot to talk about. Yeah,
I
I've
will
been
have to
kind of
say that the Toad Scroll was recency bias from it just coming out. I think it needs to
okay.
go down. It just hangs out here because it was invited.
Okay, I've been kind of driving the picks that we talk about. What do you want to talk about in this category, ZZ? Because I feel like you've got some explaining to do.
All right, let's talk Talonflame. Let's just start at the very top.
Okay.
Um, if you look at the top threats and the common picks, the two categories above what we see right now, in the viable options category, and if you just assume that nobody's bringing Dedenne because everybody's prepared for Dedenne, what Pokemon would you feel most comfortable counter swapping into a Talonflame safe swap?
Well, obviously Quagsire, right? Or Lapras.
Well, you may want to like you could save swap or like counter swap Lapras in a scenario like that, but if the Talonflame just goes straight fly,
Hmm.
it reaches its last move before the sparkling aria is reached because I think you just need like a one turn advantage to just always get to three moves.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance that you just knock out the Lapras with that attack. So it's not guaranteed that you even get to land any water type damage on the Talonflame. Whereas with Quagsire, which sounds like the next best thing, you may be in a position where you have to actually successfully
Bait.
land a Stone Edge to take it out because if you just Aqua Tail, that's a fairly weak move, right? And a Talonflame may just live that and then be in a very awkward range where you can't quite match shot down. And a Brave Bird hurts. It hurts so much that it could just straight up knock you out. And also, a Brave Bird is reached after 15 turns. So if you counter swap it and aren't immediately on the same pace as the Talonflame, you may still have to be the one to shield first. So, yeah, I personally feel as if there's no Dedenne on the team and if there's no um like less common water type like Blastos on Azumarill,
Sumeral.
it's just really difficult to properly answer a Talonflame safe swap at this stage of the meta.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's another area where some teams may leave themselves exploitable, just not taking Talonflame as seriously because it's not all that common. But I think it's in a fairly good spot right now, just because of that lack of water pressure.
You actually make a really good point, and this is the best argument that I've heard so far for this Pokemon's placement. I actually agree with you. And if you look at the pacing for Lapras, the sparkling arias are 12, 11, 11, 11, and the fly is 15 and then 10. So you're going to get to the two flies in 25 turns where it's going to be 30 plus for Lapras to get to the third sparkling aria. And I can you withstand one as a Talonflame? I assume you can. Let me see.
Like one sparkling area, like you live one in the zeros, I think.
Yeah.
But like the real, let me quickly sim that. I know that like a Skeletorch with its torch songs, because I've just been playing Skeletorch because I'm not that smart. Um,
Well,
like
Sparkling Aria
that
does
definitely
69%.
knocks out nice.
Nice.
So if we give one turn of advantage to the Talonflame and let it go
Hmm.
straight fly, energy plus. Can we do turns here? I don't even know. Let's
Yeah,
just
I
give
think you have
it
to
an
give it a full
incinerate.
Incinerate, right?
Yeah. Let's just give it a full incinerate. It just has to do with how quickly it gets to its moves.
You can give
Um,
the Talon a full Incinerate, and then the Lapras like 3 Psy Waves to account for the swap.
that is true. That is true actually. But yeah, like you get there first, and then it essentially, like it's going to be IV dependent. Is what it
Hmm.
is. Like you need a good Lapras, and you need them to not have that much attack on the Talonflame. Is I think the situation here. Um, but yeah, it's not great, right? Especially if you don't shield early. Maybe they just keep on going for fast attacks, and
Hmm.
um, it's like it's not super comfortable at least. And maybe it even changes if there's like a flame charge that comes through early. Let me check that actually. Like, what if you are flame charge fly? Yeah, if you're a
Hmm.
flame charge fly, you just straight up you flame charge early, and then you still get to your fly and your second fly at the same pace.
Yeah.
And then you just cleanly win that matchup. So Flame Charge Talonflame always guarantees swap if the Lapras is one turn behind,
Hmm.
essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think Flame Charge Talon looks even better in the twos than it does in the ones, even if you account for the extra Psy Waves
Yeah.
and then the 1 turn. So yeah.
This then would leave the Quagsire in a little bit of a better spot because it's not really that afraid of the Brave Bird anymore. So it's like kind of pick your poison, but
Mhm.
still, just overall, we're talking about the worst matchups outside of Dedenne. And like even something like a Credilli, where you have a good matchup if you're on even energy, that also just can flip with one Incinerate. So especially given that um, like if you draw out the matchup as the Credilli, just do a lot of Rock Tombs, get the shields down, and then maybe you would live the last move. But
Mhm.
the Talonflame may just dip out of that matchup, bank a fly, and then throw that undebuffed later.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you're never truly safe, is what I'm getting at. If there is
Mhm.
a Talonflame and you don't have a proper response to it.
I agree. I think Talonflame also being such a hard punish for Shadow Scizor is something that's going to send it up the ranks. Because even if you could just, like you said, if you can rule out one Pokemon, in our example, we said if the opponent doesn't have the Dene, then what do they do against Talonflame? Safe swap. Well, if the opponent does have Scizor and you have Talonflame, I automatically that changes the whole dynamic about how the game is going to go. So Talonflame being at number one in our viable options slot, I think makes a lot of sense. You've got Galarian Moltres pretty high. Honestly, I would swap two Pokemon here. I would swap Fortress and I put it above the Galarian Moltres. I put Fortress right behind Talonflame, and this is not bias. This is the fact that Fortress with Bug Bite, and I actually have heard some trainers tell me that Mirror Shot and Rock Tomb is the way to go because you get the extra stab damage, but that's to be determined. But I think that Fortress with Rock Tomb, it's able to beat all the other bugs. Bug Bite is just such a devastating move, especially against dark types. I think the Fortress has a lot of play, a lot of neutral play. It doesn't like pop in the Sims. It doesn't look like, oh my gosh, this Pokemon's going to dominate everything. But I think it has enough bulk, enough staying power, and enough damage output to be a wedge, kind of like a Zoomerol in that sense. Slower pacing, consistent damage, maybe a couple of debuffs could flip the script, so to speak. Stabilize an interesting spot here. Sorry, you want to talk about Fortress?
Yeah, I just want to comment briefly on how it is a very strong answer to what we have as the number one Pokemon here in Credilli. But also, it's not even that bad into Dusclops, where you would think that a bug damage dealing Pokemon may not be that great into a Ghost. But because of Bug Bite being a one turn fast attack, and Dusclops having a lot of defense, but a very small HP pool actually, Fortress is actually perfectly capable of holding its own in that matchup,
Mhm.
despite having resisted damage as its main damage source.
Yeah, it's one of those counterintuitive things. You figure, like you said, ghost versus bug. The bug would not do too well, but bug bite is just that OP, I guess. Gligar actually looks really good in The Sims. We saw Dunebug try to bring it to NAIC, if I'm not mistaken. He didn't have that much success with it, but it does look very interesting. The Fury Cutter can be so fickle. A lot of the matchups are actually very, very close. Glycopod being 3 spots from the bottom of this list, I think is absolute blasphemy as well. This Pokemon is so versatile. It's so powerful. I think this Pokemon deserves to be a lot higher, probably top 4, top 5, in my opinion. Araquanid will be interesting. And I saw Homesize Henry having success with Toedscruel. So you aren't the only one who thinks this Pokemon might have something.
I think it's like definitely a strong contender in the Go Battle League. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how popular it is going to be in Show 6, but between the very interesting typing as a ground grass type and just like the sheer power of Mud Slap, it's always going to be viable at least. Yeah, I don't actually disagree with Golisopod being underrated by me here. It's just like a Pokemon that I personally dislike because it's always bad if I use it and super strong when it's being used against me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a personal agenda against Golisopod, but yeah, I think it's definitely a Pokemon that, with the Fury Cutter damage being so good into Credilli,
Mm.
with its flexibility, just very efficient charge attacks, very good at shutting down ground types. Yeah, I can definitely see it do stuff, and I think the
Yeah.
jury's kind of still out on whether you want the Shadow Claw to be strong into the Ghost types or the Fury Cutters to just really lean in on that stab damage. I think Fury Cutter is slightly better,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, it's definitely one of the more flexible picks for sure.
Well, Fury Cutter is much better in the Cradilly matchup, of course, and I think you're going to be seeing that pretty often. Cradilly is a big threat. Fury Cutter also a little bit harder to count, harder to anticipate, especially if you're in a high pressure situation. So that might be more of a nuanced thing, and it wouldn't frazzle a really seasoned trainer. But to me, at least, it looks a little bit more hectic. So we've spent a lot of time in this, almost an hour into the recording. How about in our don't overlook section? We won't list every Pokemon here. If you want to see the full visual aid, make sure to visit ZZ's profile on X, formerly known as Twitter, or to watch the YouTube version where we will have the graphic up on stream. I just want to talk about like 2 picks here, and then if you want to take a couple for your side as well. So in this don't overlook slot, you've got Pokemon like Jellicent. You also have Regidrago, which I think is a bit inexplicable personally. But the one I want to point out is actually
In, in
the.
in what way? Should it be higher or lower? Like,
I mean, it's fun. I played it in Go Battle League in a meta with Dedenne, Tinkaton, and Azumarill. I do not think Regidrago is a very good pick. I think something like Namankichi's Shadow Dragonite might be better. But that's besides the point. The Pokemon I really want to talk about is the Kanto Ninetales. This Pokemon actually
oh,
won a couple of practice tournaments in the Kanto Cult over the past week. And honestly, it sims really well. If you give it Ember, Weather Ball, Overheat, of course, in the Sims, you're getting the shields on the Weather Ball baits, you're landing the overheats, blah, 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 blah. This Pokemon actually looks pretty solid. It's a bulkier fire type. It's easier to handle than something like a Talonflame or a Typhlosion in the fact that it's not running Incinerate. I think Shadow Kanto Ninetales might be slept on a little bit going into the World Championships here. And yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Shadow Cancer Ninetales is
You can be
top.
honest.
It's top 5 on my fraud watch list. I think
Oh,
it's like it really wants to land the overheat. Obviously, like the pacing to the weather ball is nice, but it does have fairly little counterplay against the ground types that are already there just to check Tinkaton and Dedenne. It essentially gets one shot by a Rock Tomb, and we
mm,
know how much Credilli loves to Rock Tomb stuff. Um, I think it just isn't very flexible with
mm,
mostly sporting mono fire coverage. Um, it's just overwhelmingly average. It would lose the head-to-head against Talonflame if you wanted to go for a fire type. And I also feel as if a lot of trainers really picked out Kanto Ninetales as a potential breakout stuff for any IC, and then it just did nothing.
Yeah.
So I feel as if it looks nice on paper, but it may be a little bit of a sim hero. It may be a little bit underwhelming, and it like I like the neutrality it has into most matchups. But if you have like four really nice neutral matchups where you could do something, but then there's also like one and a half that you don't want to be in at all, you would probably rather have something more specialized, more
Hmm.
unique, rather than just raw fire damage.
Fair. All right. I'm curious if you wanted to highlight a couple of picks here that you were excited about.
Um, so this is one that I'm not really excited about, but that I put top of the don't overlook list for a reason, because I believe that Shadow Steelix with Thunderfang could be a sneaky good pick for the world's meta, just because it is a way of um killing two birds with one stone, essentially, even though neither of the Pokemon that it checks that I'm implying that you need coverage for are birds, and it's also not a rock type. But yeah, it's a Dedenne counter. It is a Shadow Scizor counter. Um, it is fairly good into Credilli. It is decent enough into Dusclops. It is pretty strong into Mandibus, like really,
Mm.
really strong into Mandibus, actually. It
Yep.
obviously really hates being in a matchup against a ground type, being in a matchup against a fighting type, even though it can fight back against Primeape.
Psychic
But
Fangs.
yep. Especially if the Primeape runs Ice Punch Rage Fist, then you can just let the first move go. Um, Against some Pokemon, you may need to shield more often than you would like to with such a bulky pick. And yeah, like the main drawback is losing the head-to-head against each and every other ground type.
Mm.
But against many teams, Steelix has like four really positive matchups where you can like dictate switch advantage or make it so that some lines are impossible to bring for them, and especially against some Pokemon that otherwise may sweep you, it's just like real good insurance. And I don't think many people are playing it, but I know like a teammate of mine just recently played. I name redacted, like a very high profile LATAM trainer, who was, I don't want to like spoil the sauce for anybody, because like obviously like those tournaments are anonymized for a reason.
Mm.
But yeah, they played a teammate of mine and they had a Steelix, and
Mm.
yeah, it's a strong pick. It's a strong pick. I think it can do stuff, and a lot of people will not have a ton of practice against it. So yeah, definitely one that I have an eye on. I don't have a great Shadow Steelix in terms of IVs, but I may consider it if we get it back into rotation for the upcoming Rocket event, which thankfully starts the Monday before Worlds.
Precisely. And you know what? I'm just going to dox them. I'm just going to say exactly who it was. It was LNDS Corlash, and they won Fortaleza. All right, that's who it was. That was also this season, if you remember.
That was the in between meta where Rice also played
Uh
it,
huh.
right?
Uh huh.
It wasn't that trainer, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like maybe somebody who already had success with it bring it back right now, because it does look very well positioned.
Oh, okay. Interesting, interesting. One last thing I wanted to ask you with Shadow Steelix, what move set do you think is most optimal? Because a lot of people are stuck on Psychic Fang's Breaking Swipe, but there's a lot of versatility there.
I think Thunderfang is a given, Psychic
Yep.
Fang is a given, and then it depends. I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but like I've heard conversations of people that were debating whether they want to use Crunch or whether that would leave them too vulnerable to Shadow Drapion, which then you would be able to
Mm,
only hit for resisted damage with either Psychic Fangs or Crunch. But honestly, I don't believe that Drapion is that big of a threat. We've been over that.
agreed.
So yeah, I think probably, yeah, I think Crunch or Breaking Stuff is probably it. I think Earthquake is just taking too long. I think Earthquake,
Yeah.
we don't have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that, to be honest. Yeah, I think Crunch, Psychic Fangs. If I had to pick right now, I would agree with you. Uh, who knows? Maybe trainers practicing with it before Worlds will make a different decision. But ZZ, we've crossed the 1 hour mark. This is a brilliant tier list. As much as I tease you about your picks, I do think there is a lot of validity here. You won me over with Town Flame. I think you made a really good appeal when it comes to Steelix. The Tickaton, the jury for me is still out on that case. We will see. Maybe I'll remix this list with my own picks kind of shuffled in and we'll compare our results. But either way, if you're
I
watching
would
the
love
YouTube
to see
version,
it.
you can see this on video for the YouTube version. I think it's time for us to shift gears if you're ready and talk about some
Yes, yes,
players.
yes. Fewer Pokemon, more personalities from the competitive scene. And yeah, like
Yeah.
we took a page out of last year's book in a way where we had a bunch of categories and essentially took those categories as excuses to talk about players that we want to talk about.
Mhm.
And I think we should just do that again. Speedy, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get us started on that. One thing I wanted to mention is that this is the first season where we've had a cutoff per region. You know, top 75 NA, top 50 EU, top 50 LATAM, top 10, I believe, at OC. I just wanted to kind of quantify for everyone what the championship points cutoffs actually look like. Because, you know, we've got the leaderboards. You can go and look on the website if you want. But if you're just a trainer that's looking to qualify for Worlds next year and you're like, well, what's it really going to take to get into that threshold? You know, what does that actually look like in terms of points? I'll run down the list for you. So top 75, our bottom two trainers to qualify for the World Championships were Twastel and Buckeye Fitzy. They both came in with just over 600 points. Twastel at 605 and Buckeye Fitzy at 607. So if all things remain equal, being in the 600s at the end of next season will likely net you a Worlds invite, especially if the points remain as top heavy as they were this season. Going to EU, top 50 is the cutoff. 747 is what Maxi P 10 million was able to net over the length of the season. He's actually tied with three other trainers for the same exact amount, including Dinaski. So if the US is 600s, EU is 750s or more. Latam,
I want to interject here real quick
yes.
because for the 2026 season, we have seen changes being made to the number of invitations that can be earned. And
Right.
Europe is up to 65, and Latin America is also up to 65. So it's going to be a little easier for Europeans and our LATAM trainers to qualify next season.
And that's why we make such a great show because the things I overlook, you're actually on the ball. Thank you so much, CZ. Latam top 50, Basti was the lowest trainer on the boards to qualify with 525 points. And then top 10 at OCI or top 10 OC was actually Godzilla at the bottom of the list with 770. So whereas as you pointed out, the qualification net will increase in size for EU and LATAM, for OC, man, it is tough. 770 points, which is what, 30 points above where Maxi P and Dinoski were this season. That's still very, very challenging. So I hope that OC can get a little bit more help in terms of local tournaments, lower point threshold, whatever they might need to do that.
I love that we
Um,
have a special event in New Zealand for the upcoming season too. With the Auckland Special Championship has been announced that will take place towards
right?
the end of January, I believe. And I really hope that we get another community stream because I do want to see that scene highlighted.
Me too. I think it's going to be incredible. I always wanted to go to New Zealand selfishly because that's where a lot of Lord of the Rings was filmed. And I definitely want to see the beautiful landscapes.
I was very close. Like the timing is very awkward, so it will not happen. But if it happened at like I don't know, like May or like that like May in here is like not even that nice of a time of year in the southern hemisphere. But like any time of the year where I would have had more time to travel, I would have probably even considered that just because New Zealand is like one of those once in a lifetime destinations.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like having an excuse to do something entirely different for probably like 2 weeks would have been lovely. Maybe it will come back another year, but for now, we'll just enjoy the show when we hopefully get to watch some of the New Zealand battles.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Yusei compete as well. I think that's the trainer we always talk about when we talk about New Zealand. So hopefully he has a good showing at that event. Um, in terms of qualification, as ZZ pointed out, the net is increasing a little bit, but I just want to give everyone a ballpark for what these trainers had to rack up in terms of points in order to qualify for Worlds. Now, in our player reviews, we've got several categories. We've got heating up on the rebound, dark horse candidates, champions, which we not so gently stole from Tap Tap Cast, return to the WCS, wild cards, most improved, and then our world's favorite. If we can only pick one trainer that we think is going to win it all. So, ZZ, let's start off with heating up. I'm just going to throw my list out there. All right. My three trainers for the heating up category. I've got Adib Khan, who was excellent in Portland, got better as the weekend went on, playing very, very clean, very, very high on him going into Worlds. Stud Muffins, who has only improved, composure's unmatched. He always wears the hat, brim pulled down, can't read his expressions. Very, very cool guy. And Charming Pori, who has been absolutely tearing things up in South Korea, winning tournaments, climbing the Go Battle League leaderboards, just doing awesome. I think those three trainers are at peaking at the right time in the season.
I love that selection. I actually have two of those trainers coming up later on as well. And yeah, the only one that I don't have on my list, on the fairly long list, is Adib Khan, but I still want to give him a shout out because we did battle at NAIC and we battled at the tables, which is like always an experience, if I may say so myself.
Yeah.
And I was like fairly laggy, but he extended a lot of good sportsmanship to me during those battles when it was like maybe he lagged a little here and there, but just like the interaction at the table was like very amicable, even though there was a lot on the line. And definitely shout out to him, fantastic battler as well. Um, I think my heating up category, maybe I'm overheating already a little bit because my first player that I want to mention is actually it's Axon because like how hot can you be? It's
What?
a former champion. It's the NAIC winner. Like if there's anybody who's on form right now, then it is Axon. And yeah, like there's some talk in the VGC community about Wolfbig potentially not only taking the triple crown of regional champion, IC champion, world's champion, but also doing it in one season, which nobody has done before. And yeah, Axon could do that in just a couple of weeks,
Mm.
given how late in the season his resurgence came. Um, but yeah, I think that is a trainer that is undoubtedly on fire. My second name is Nickname 29585.
Mm.
The only two times EU champion this season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's one of those trainers that like I see him enter practice tournaments a lot, and I rarely ever see him go anything than like maybe like one round loss, but never really more than that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, he's definitely, especially towards the second half of the season, been kind of the gold standard for European competition, at least domestically.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel as if he's definitely one to watch out for. And my last trainer that I have on my list is the fourth place Portland finisher, who also got ninth place at NEIC with a regular Sable Eye. It is Ash Nash, a trainer that I found a lot of people are rooting for because he's definitely in the conversation for most excellent tournament runs without that number one just yet, without that goal. And even though it would be crazy to get that at Worlds, I feel as if, um, as a battler, as a team builder, it's just like a very consistent competitor who got second place in Merida, third place in Atlanta, fourth place in Portland. He's really had a very impressive season, and I also think that his gameplay has been on point as of recent. So yeah, I feel as if he's definitely somebody to have an eye on.
Interesting. I have all three of those trainers somewhere else on my list, but I had the same kind of dilemma that you had. I was like, well, somebody like it's Axon, are they a champion already, or are they heating up? Like, how do you categorize this person? Can I put them in two
We have more,
categories?
like we limited us to three per category, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if we just count the champions, like the people who actually got like a gold medal at one of the championships, or maybe like even a little trophy, we'll probably have like 30 to 40 people to to put
yeah,
into the different categories. So
yeah.
obviously there's going to be oversights. Like I left some trainers out of the list entirely that I think are excellent and could easily win the whole thing.
Mm,
But that's just the level of competition, that there's so many trainers that are so accomplished,
yeah.
and it's lovely to see. But yeah, like I'm very curious to see who you consider to be on the rebound, who is like somebody who may have something to prove and will want to bounce back at the World Championships.
This one is such a strange category because you never count these players out. You never count them like as has-beens or washed by any means because they're all really really talented, and a lot of them have reached such insane heights that not winning events outright feels like a step back. Right. I just want to preface my picks by saying that because a lot of people are going to raise eyebrows
I
on the
treated the
rebound.
category as exactly the same, by the way. Like all of
Yeah.
my like all of my trainers are a lot more accomplished than I am myself. So this is definitely not meant as a disrespect.
Yeah, when I visualize this, I literally visualize a basketball player who got the game-winning shot or the game-winning dunk, whatever it might be, and then the next game they miss the game-winning shot. It's like, oh well, they've been there, they've done it, we know they can, but they've stumbled a little bit, and maybe they're coming back. The trainers that I have on my list are Dunebug 97, which he did win the Merida special event. He took on TZ Sphinx in the finals. Incredible player, Dunebug always is, but anything less than 3 regional wins in a season and a runner-up at an IC feels like a step back. So,
Oh,
uh,
fair.
and then if you consider Dunebug's world's run last season, where he finished in the 60s, 65th overall or something like that, I think it leaves a lot to be desired for him personally, and I think a lot of people want to see him succeed. The next pick is actually his nemesis and rival, Rise to Occasion. So Rise is on the rebound. He had a lot of success during the regular season. I mean, this is again Rise standards. Fifth in Louisville, second in San Antonio, first in Vancouver in the in between meta. Then he had strong showings, seventh in Monterey and fifth in Milwaukee. But where Rise has really struggled a bit is in the international play. LAIC he was tied for 33rd, and NAIC he was tied for 25th. And this is a year or two after his spectacular run with Wadaj, House Stark, and Rise up there at the top at NAIC. I just feel like Rise at the international level has still some things to prove. And I think that after his win in the in between meta, we're going to see just how well he team builds when everyone else has as much time and as much invested into this tournament. And then finally, I have LNDS Harjef, the king of LATAM. Last season, his crown has been taken by Marto Galde, and I think that Harjef has a lot to prove. He's made some cryptic posts online saying, "Well, I'm going to actually really go hard. I'm going to really invest." And if you talk with him, he's such a lovable guy. Didn't have the best run at NEIC this past season, but I do think he's got what it takes to win it all. So we'll see if he locks in and does well at Worlds.
I know from the features that sometimes play between battles at the regionals that he's also just like a competitor at heart who really aims for excellence and really makes it his mission. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely excited to see what he cooks up for this biggest tournament of the season. Yeah, I would say that my three players are like giants on essentially exactly the same level. I will start us off with Lyle Jeffs the third.
Ooh,
Um,
good pick.
who is the Louisville champion, but actually has missed out on top eight in the five tournaments since, which, like, many of those runs were still very respectable, pretty good runs. But with somebody like Lyle Jeffs, who is he at like three regional wins at this point?
Yeah.
He's definitely somebody that you consider a threat even at the world's level. I think he needs to drop the K9. This is where I actually had um, like this is literally in my notes before you pointed out the
Too
K9.
soon.
Um, um, But yeah, I think if he finds the right team composition for the occasion, then he's going to improve on his previous Worlds runs, which were 2-2 each. Yeah, Lyle definitely one of the most respected trainers within the North American community, and certainly a force to be reckoned with the potential to bounce back. The next trainer is probably like I alluded to this yesterday. I put out of pocket here because I think Pocket probably has just about the highest standards of any trainer out there. He started the season with I think 9 top cuts in a row, which is kind of crazy. He later went on to win Milwaukee, but he narrowly missed out on top cut in Portland. And I think his NAIC showing was a 1-2, which is his worst performance of the season. Since then, he is essentially just like consistently stayed on page 1 of the GBL leaderboard and won the Devon World Championship without dropping a game. So this is the type of pocket we're dealing with. And yeah, like he didn't have to try for any IC, right? Because he already won that the year before. He hasn't won Worlds yet, but maybe the yet carries that sentence a lot here because I think he's definitely on the rebound, as the category says. Um, Also, it's like a Quagsire meta, and we know that this is one of his
Uh-huh.
favorites.
Oh yeah.
Um, then for my last pick, I went back to Europe, and you ended with an international champion. I will end with an international champion. I think Tonton Matus. I think 2023 is when he got his EUIC crown.
Mhm.
He is a player that after the first third of the season was probably considered like top 3 to top 5 in the world because
Yeah,
he
agreed.
was just like doing top 4s back to back to back. Um, and ever since he's like, I feel like he's one of those players who, in terms of ability, is really, really up there. But he also needs a meta that he and his spicy ways personally vibe with. And I don't know, like he hasn't really played as many tournaments since the first half of the season. Um, but I really wonder what he thinks of the current meta, whether he finds a way of breaking it in such creative fashion as we've seen from him before. But what I know is that he already brought Steelix to a tournament once this season, and I earlier did call out Steelix as a potential core breaker for this meta. So I would not be surprised if there was a very special recipe being cooked up somewhere in France right now.
Tauntaun is great. I've had a few chances to talk with him. Very kind, very welcoming, very humble champion. Uh, and he's good. He's good when he's not 4 or 5 times weak to a Zoom roll or something that's like prominent in the meta. And we'd love to see him with his team building shenanigans. He's on my list as well. I'll talk more about him later. But those are actually really, really good picks. Lyle Jeffs, Out of Pocket, and Tauntaun. Man, I feel like Out of Pocket, I don't want to say is the most improved in terms of gameplay, but he's the most improved in terms of mental aspects of the game. Because early on in the season, when you saw him enter day 2 in the loser side bracket, it was like a Death Eater had flown by him at night and sucked half of his soul out. He just didn't feel like his heart was in it. But something changed with Pocket, and his mental I think is stronger than ever. So hopefully that 1-2 at NEIC doesn't rattle him too much because I think he's going to do really well. Next category, dark horse candidates. I'm going to kick things off with Ashton Ash because this is a player that you mentioned before in your heating up category. Ashton Ash, I wouldn't say directly that he's heating up. I think he's always been pretty good. He's always been a player that's, top 8, top 4, challenge pocket last year for the NEIC crown in New Orleans. I think Ash Nash has everything he needs to win, especially if he's got a team from Eomero, because that seems to be the winning recipe. And
I'm glad that shout out happened because I originally wanted to put Eomero on my list, but then forgot about it, which like kind of goes to show that he's such an underrated player and team builder in his own right. But yeah, please
yeah,
continue.
well, that's the thing as well. Like you can steal a team, but actually playing it to a high level is just a whole nother aspect of the game, and it's not as easy as some players make it look. Colin comes to mind, right? He's somebody that can take somebody else's team and master it in half the time, which is honestly remarkable skill. So maybe Ashton Ash can do that at Worlds. We're going to see. I battled him in the Candle Cult yesterday, and I wished him well. I really hope that he does well because he feels like one of those trainers that's due for a win. The next player on my list, I don't necessarily know if this trainer is due for a win in the same sense, but I want to shout out to Sceptile Ice. This trainer was almost my most improved for the season because he really turned a corner at the beginning of this year. But Sceptile Ice is just so versatile, so calculated, and so fluid with the gameplay. I think he's got a really good chance to knock off some big names, especially if they aren't ready for him. My final pick is Richie 1409. And Richie is one of those players who he won with Galarian Corsola and Primate Core that you called out. He won, I believe, in Bogota with that. Richie's so good. We always, gush about him as being a good member of the community, but I really want to see Richie just shave off that remaining 10% on his way to greatness because I think he's 90% of the way there. He's very talented. He's a threat. He finished top cut at an IC at least once this season, if not twice. So good.
You're still wrong. He top cut all 3 ICs, and I think he came in 9th, 5th, and 3rd. Third
Perfect.
at LAIC, I'm pretty sure. 9th at NAIC, if I'm not mistaken, and then 5th at EUIC, I'm pretty sure.
Your brain is like a database. You're exactly right.
I think I just took the notes somewhere. I don't know whether he still comes up for me, whether I have him somewhere here. Yeah, I had him in my return to the World Championship. But yeah, this is where I got that from. But yeah, certainly a trainer worth shouting out because that level of consistency is insane.
Yeah, and the thing is, as you said, incredible finishes at IC. He won Bogota, but then there were a couple of duds. He was tied 33rd in Atlanta, and then he was 25th in Monterey. So Richie's one of those players that I don't feel like is as close as someone like Ashton Ash, but they are adjacent, I would say, in terms of skill, capability. Those are my dark horses: Ashton Ash, Sceptile Ice, and Richie 1409.
I personally feel as if my horses are even a little darker. So my first candidate is somebody who is yet to lose a series in play Pokemon. It's Boom20, the little champion. Never played a tournament before, never played a tournament after. Won that tournament in a very memorable finals against Colin Six. I think he's somebody whose execution is second to none, who will not overthink his gameplay decisions as much, because I feel as if when you're constantly playing tournaments and you always measure yourself up against everybody else, that may maybe impact your mental a little bit at times. Whereas if you just feel okay, I just get to play this and it's great that I get to be here and I know what I can do, but it's not as if I'm consistently I don't really have to prove myself. He went into Lille, just took it and went home. And who's to say you can't just do that in Anaheim as well? So definitely one of the strongest European contenders. Moving on to one of the strongest Asian contenders, and that is Master Mihir. Master Mihir is the current Indian champion. We've seen how well Indian competitors do on the big stage, from Beelzeboy taking 4th place last year. I personally had the honor of playing against Master Mihir in a grassroots tournament in March, and I had a massive team comp advantage and still only narrowly eked out the victory. And what I personally we've talked about how maybe Shadow Annihilate is a little bit of a risky bring right now. I personally don't think I've ever seen a trainer as masterful with Shadow Annihilate as Master Mihir. So I wonder whether he's going to bring it or whether he considers it a little bit too RPS in this meta. But yeah, I think he is also one of those trainers who won the qualifiers and the playoffs, so not even any drop off in performance, and certainly somebody to keep an eye on for Worlds. And keeping with the theme of my dark horses all being players who didn't really play that many tournaments, my last player that I want to shout out is SS Thorn, who is obviously a Canadian prodigy. 2 tournaments, 2 top 8s. Consistent GBL and grassroots success, and I think if he competed at the frequency of somebody as Pocket or Nighttime Clasher, we would just talk about him as much, but he just doesn't get to travel to as many events. Yeah, I hope that we will see him at Anaheim, and I can definitely like his ceiling is world champion. That's for sure, in my opinion.
Wow. Wow. High praise for SS Thorn. Interesting, interesting. ZZ, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I did see a chat discussion about Boom 20 not being able to attend Worlds this year. It's going to be
That would
very
be
sad if that's the
unfortunate.
case. Yeah, if that's the case, it's very upsetting because he is so good. He beat Colin in the finals, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
thought
like
so.
that was the Malama Ariados energy management
Uh,
extravaganza. That was a crazy tournament to watch.
yeah, that was the one I watched on mute, and I was like, man, Colin, I wasn't familiar with your game. I apologize. That was really an insane series. So hopefully that's not true. Hopefully Boom is able to attend, but I think that's a great pick as a dark horse candidate. Moving on to our champions. Let's talk about a trainer who has become the foil to the former king of Latam, still king of Brazil, in my opinion. That is going to be LNDS Corlash. Corlash has won 2 events this season. Very powerful player. I don't think that Corlash did that well at NAIC, tied for 33rd overall, but he did win the crown in Fortaleza and Rio de Janeiro. And yeah, I mean, again, this category for me is focused on players that have won championships, have done it multiple times, and have proven that they can do it essentially anytime that they heat up. Second trainer on my list is going to be Pato Man. I don't think there needs to be any explanation here. Pato Man is absolutely on another level, and the miraculous turn of events that happened at NAIC is going to be very hard to repeat against someone of his level. So Pato Man is incredible. Third pick is going to be a trainer you mentioned earlier, Nickname. Won 2 events in Europe, arguably the best trainer in EU right now. If you win an event with Guzzlord, you're already on my best friends list. If you win one with Corviknight as well, you're way up on the list. So Nickname did both of those things. I'm a big fan. So Corlash, Potoman, and Nickname are my champions.
Yeah, single-handedly ridding Corviknight of the fraud allegations. That is actually fairly impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a little bit of an overlap in that. I also want to shout out Patoman for what
Ah,
was just like an incredible season, especially towards the latter half of it, with making day 3 and 2 different ICs, taking his home one and at EUIC, as I will know, and also making the Sevilla Grand Finals as well, where he only succumbed to what was a very tough team composition to go up against. But yeah, certainly one of Europe's greatest champions. Then maybe the greatest champion of the season, because he took 4 events, is Marto Galde. And like you talk about potential kings of Latin America, and I
mhm.
think the crown for this year certainly resides in Argentina. He took Santiago, Merida, LAIC, and Lima in the same season. And
Wow.
the only question marks that I have for Mato is he able to do it in the US? Because like he's been, I think, doing a top 8 at USC or something, so that was excellent as well. But he played 2 US tournaments this season. It was a 33rd place in San Antonio and a 65th place at NEIC. Granted, the NEIC
Short
performance came at
notice.
very short notice because he was originally supposed to cast the event, but I think there were visa issues. But yeah, like Marcho definitely, I think the most impressive season of everybody. But yeah, like is are the United States just cursed, or will he be able to do it at Anaheim as well? And yeah, my last match champion is probably the North American trainer of the season, even though Axon has some momentum. But Elam, Elam never finished outside of the top 5 all season. um, he won Toronto and Atlanta. He just came second at NEIC. I think he's like the name to beat, probably. And even though like we still have our prediction for who is going to take it, and I went like a little bit spicier with that one because I like to make calls that aren't super obvious.
You picked yourself.
But yeah, no, I did not. But yeah, like Elam, obviously, like if we talk about consistency, like if you look up consistency in the dictionary, you will see Elam with two gold medals around his neck. Um, and probably also like that AI picture with like super strong arms as well. Um, yeah, like
Fair.
I feel as if you had like the face of Latam, it's Marto. If you had the face of Europe, it's Pato, and if you had the face of NA, it's Elam this season. So those are my champions.
Wow. I really can't argue. I think those are all incredible, incredible picks. Elam not finishing outside of fifth place is even more remarkable when you consider how many events he actually went to, which is staggering. Um, Next category is the return to the WCS, and I have some overlap with you this time. The first
Oh,
trainer that is returning to the WCS is actually going to be Marto for me. So not only, of course, is he the best trainer in the world right now, actually eclipsing even what Dunebug was able to do last season. If you think about it, if Dunebug was able to beat um, Emmy Weedle at EUIC, they would have identical, semi-identical records. IC champion, 3 regionals in the same season, but Marto took everything one step further. And you mentioned him being a bit cursed in terms of NA performances, but I mean, he was third overall at Worlds in Hawaii, so maybe it's just the mainland US where he seems to
yeah, that may be true.
not find his footing. But yeah, for me, this return to the WCS for Marto feels like unfinished work. Third place overall last season with Whimsicott on his team, came very, very close. I think that his matchup versus, I believe it was Basti, was probably the most watched clip of the entire tournament. It was absolutely incredible. And for someone who memes as much as he does and who jokes around as much as he does, he is more cracked at the game than anyone. So Marta coming back to the WCS, especially with prep time, especially knowing he's competing right off the bat, everyone should be scared of the Argentinian. Next up, I've got It's Axon, of course, 2023 world champion in Yokohama. The storybook ending wasn't even done there because he wants another crown, and I think he's, like you said, heating up in the prime position to do that in Anaheim. Third pick is actually going to be, I believe he finished seventh overall at Worlds last season with Skeledirge and Gudra. That is going to be PvP David. I think PvP David returning to the WCS should scare everyone else on the other side because he's just so fast. He thinks on his feet like no one else. And I've been a PvP David fan ever since Hawaii. I think he's incredible. But yeah, Axon, Marto, and David, I honestly, skill wise, I put them all in the same bracket. I think they all could win the whole thing.
I'm really happy that like this is not the first time, but you always pick some of the players for your categories that I want to include but didn't have space for anymore. And David is definitely one
Ah,
of them because like I think he won one and then made two other grand finals this season, which again, like
yes.
if this is your resume for the season, you are definitely somebody who can go all the way. Yeah, I think that's very good selection of trainers. My three, like we've been over one of them already, who is Richie 1409. Yeah, like obviously calling out IC consistency, Bogota Championship, but he also went 0-2 last Worlds, if I looked that up correctly. So he definitely has something to prove, and I'm fairly confident that he will. Um, Another trainer that I think will be very interesting to watch return to the World Championship is actually our last world champion. Yekai will be back. We have seen essentially nothing of him for a year because I guess like he's mostly busy with school. He's also not competing in a TPCI region, but he was the best trainer at the Championship last year. Now the question is, where does he go from here? Will he just do it again? Was he practicing for it? Is he like eager to
Hmm.
take the double crown, or does he think that, oh, like I've already done it all essentially? And we've seen him go 0-2 at one of these. We've seen him win one of these. So Yakai at World Championships always going to be like an extreme at least, and yeah, obviously good enough to win it all, but just like somebody that we actually know fairly little about based on just how little exposure there is between the big events. Um, and yeah, my last trainer that I want to highlight is one of the I think 7 women qualified for Worlds, which is like I hang out in pretty co-ed spaces a lot, and sometimes regionals go by without seeing a women battler on stage, and
Mhm.
that is always a little disheartening. And so I think Paulasha is not only a champion in her own right, but also a little bit of a role model. And last World Championships, she actually went out against Enhoff, somebody who
Mm,
hasn't competed this year, but made for a really memorable moment, bringing in all a Lowland team, taking on Paula in her Shadow Magna zone. So really a spice battle as well, and a stream highlight that I think Pokemon even included in a little bit of a compilation
yeah.
from the World Championships afterwards because it was just so hype. And yeah, last World Championships, Paula went down in the very first round, then had a great losers bracket run all the way to day two, winning 2-1 every time. So a lot of
Ooh.
opportunities to prove that you can perform with your back to the wall. And yeah, I think she's like also like underrated, a fairly spicy team builder. I've seen a Shadow Mightyena in Bologna, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I wonder what will happen with this meta and the Palasha team of choice. I wonder whether Furret, which is a fan favorite, will make a return. And yeah, I think she'll definitely put on a show once again. Maybe they'll be cooking.
I'm really glad you mentioned Palasha because last season she got a lot of attention with Shadow Magnezone, but this season the amount of coverage, attention that's been directed at her has not been as high. But I think she's a trainer you definitely cannot sleep on, and Paula is going to be really really powerful no matter what. I remember casting that Enhoff Palasha matchup. That was wild. To win a series against Paula with an all Alola team was, yeah, I mean, if you could put achievements on your Pokemon Go PvP resume, and I was Enhoff, that would be like top three achievements for me because that's an insane feat. I like that you
I'm
mentioned
excited
Yakai.
to like
Go ahead.
again like just like little interjection, but I think Enhoff somewhat announced to be maybe like returning to the championship series a little more towards the
Mhm.
next season. And I think especially with how she's not shying away from just bringing a theme team to a tournament, just running that and actually playing it as if it was serious. I'm glad that we'll have that back.
Well, I'll tell you what's easy. The real ones remember the quintuple Moonblast debuff. All right, the real ones remember, and Enhoff playing
Okay.
Primate before anyone else. So
It's true. Had a
these
100% win rate at that tournament. One
exactly
for one
right.
medal.
This is history, right? It's already been written. But yeah, I'm really excited to see Anna come back. I think she's going to do great. I also have Yakai on my list, but not as a return to the WCS. I want to preface this, all right? I want to preface this by reviewing really quickly Yakai's bracket run at Worlds last year because I got curious while you were talking about him. He said he was the best overall trainer. I know sometimes when you look at the brackets, you say, oh, well, they had, a relatively easier run. Maybe they didn't play, two international champions back to back or whatever rationale you want to offer. Here's the record for Yakai. Round one, Nighttime Clasher. Round two, Lankern. Round three, Galaxica Bolton. Round four, LNDS Steinar. Round five, Kaibon, very talented trainer from the TPC region. Round six, Beelzeboy. Round seven, Lurgan Rocket. Round eight, Marto Galde. And then round nine, Grand Finals Inadequates. So Yakai really did run the absolute gauntlet of trainers from all different regions at Worlds. But for me, because we haven't seen much of Yakai, he's actually the first pick in my wildcards slot. Because as you alluded to, every world champion treats it differently. After Dancing Rob won, he kind of, dipped a toe into content, but then he decided to become a judge full time, and that's where his passion really is. After Axon won, he went full into content and he's trying to educate people. And he's also competing at a high level consistently, especially this season. And then Yakai has kind of just, he's younger. Maybe he's focused on school or other life responsibilities, but he's not. We can't see him as much as we can see the other two. So Yakai for me is a big wild card. He could absolutely pop off and win again. Who knows? Or he could be a trainer that has a respectable performance, but nothing like last year. Maybe last year was just special. The next pick of my wild cards, I was struggling between Tonton Batus and Desynced, and I was struggling between them for the same reason. Because they both are such elaborate team builders that either their team is totally cracked and it disrupts the meta and it just makes all their opponents fold like paper, or it's something that kind of flops. And I feel like I settled on Tonton Batus because he already won an event this season, but he's such a wild card. If he is feeling this meta, as you alluded to earlier, he could be very, very dangerous. But if he's not, it might not be a performance that he wants to remember. My final pick in the wild card slot is someone who's consistently very good, has not won an event since Liverpool, but I think has all the raw talent and commitment that you need in a player, and that is Nighttime Clasher. I think Yakai, Tauntaun, and Nighttime Clasher are my wild cards for Worlds, all for varying reasons, and I'm really curious what your picks are.
I think those are pretty excellent selections. Because of my wildcards are like my reasoning behind some of them is, or like at least behind the first, is similar to your reasoning behind Ikai, because the trainer that is my very first pick is also somebody that we haven't really ever seen, but we've heard of them. If we ever check the GBL leaderboards or maybe some screenshots of people hitting legend in just 185 battles, 315 Katunari
Mm,
315 is one of the highest profile Japanese battlers, and also just for years and years and years, just consistently been topping the GBL leaderboards. And I feel as if the Japanese community is like somewhat disappointed with how little of a role they played when like the day three, like they weren't in day three, they weren't really there anymore for the end of day two. And if we look at GBL alone, it's probably the country that has the most leaderboarders at any given time.
agreed.
There's sometimes like little bit of controversy around some of them, but most of them are just really, really good players. And I think Katanari falls into that category. And I'm really excited to see like a mystery figure like that I've seen on the leaderboards for years at this point, um, just battle live and in the flesh. Really hope that they're one of the players that actually makes it over. Um, my second wildcard pick is a lot closer to home. Is a European trainer who actually tied for most rounds won at EUIC this year. That is Kazim 33.
Mm,
I think I've heard people mention Kazim as like somebody who like really popped off this season. He would have been a candidate for most improved also, but also somebody who just in terms of raw skill probably still underperforms his ceiling almost, because like sometimes he plays overly flashy, but just being able to do that just goes to show that he's somebody who has the ability to understand and execute plays that a lot of players don't even think of.
mm,
Um, his latest tournament was, I think, a fourth place in Bologna, where he lost to Colin Six
mm.
twice. I think with mirror teams as well. So like Colin definitely an oversight in terms of, I think he's like one of the best, but I couldn't slot him in anywhere. But yeah, this is more about Kazim, who I think is an up and comer who, especially with just like a very deep UIC losers run, um, has proven this season that not only is he a champion, like he proved in Dortmund with that early title, but he's also somebody who has the stamina to just do super, super well at an international level competition. I think that's what you need for Worlds. And my last candidate is a Korean battler. This trainer is not really known for Pokemon Go. They are known for being a VGC World Champion, but Sejun Park, also known as Mang Mi, that's his IGN within Pokemon Go,
Uh-huh.
won VGC Worlds with Pachirisu. I don't know whether that is coming out for his Pokemon Go team this time, but he is qualified, and this is a true Pokemon master, like a celebrity potentially bigger than the game itself,
Yeah.
at least on the Play Pokemon stage. And I'm really excited to see what he can do because what a feat it would be, what a story it would be if somebody was able to take home trophies in like so many different games. Like certainly a jack of all trades and master of at least one, potentially more.
Yeah, imagine that. It was so hype. The trailer that was designed for Worlds in 2022, I believe we had Imagine Dragons doing the soundtrack for that song, if I remember right. But you had literally a 3D animation of the Pachirisu doing the Follow Me, and then the Draco Meteor coming down. Yeah, absolutely iconic. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than Sejun Park. Um, he's had a little bit of success in Go over the past few years. I can tell that he's committed to it. He's been trying. He tries all the Pokemon games. I think he was on a Unite team as well that also was qualified for an IC or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he's trying all the Pokemon games. To your point, and to win in a World Championship crown in two different titles, he would obviously be the first one to do it. So I'd be really excited to do that or to see that. And you mentioned Kazim, great shout out. Katunari is also good. I'm curious about the other Japanese trainers too, like Salted Koji, our PJCS champion, or Kag MP, or any of the other Ks in Japan. I think all of them have a lot of potential. So yeah, I like that
Yeah.
you're reaching to the other regions as well. This is very good. I think our next slot is most improved, and I believe we limited ourselves to one pick each, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to preface this by saying my most improved trainer, I'm going to run through their 2024 performances as quickly as I can. Lille, 65th. Stuttgart, 33rd. Liverpool, 65th. Dortmund, 33rd. Utrecht, 65th. EUIC, 97th. Worlds, 49th overall. Starting this season, not the hottest start, 33rd in Dortmund, 25th in Lille, 49th in Gdansk, and then suddenly something changed. 5th in Stuttgart, 3rd at EUIC, 7th in Sevilla. I'm talking about Kaifia, the trainer that no one can pronounce his name correctly, but I think is the most improved trainer year over year, especially in the EU region. A trainer who I believe is Amanda Lundberg's local over in Belgium. But Kaifia is so talented, especially at EUIC. Such an incredible trainer to watch. Sorry, ZZ, too soon again. Well, actually, you beat him, Pataman,
Yeah, I was about
and
to say like
you beat him.
not too soon at all, but I'm
Okay.
just smiling because we have the exact same pick. I also picked Coach.
No, really?
Yes, yes, yes. I guess like it's pretty close to home for me because so last World Championships, on my way to picking up the badge and the merch, all the swag that you get,
Yeah.
I ran into Odin, another very talented German trainer, and Koifje, obviously our pick for most improved. And yeah, this is essentially the first time I really talked to the guys. I didn't really know them before. And both of them then just ended up having such an impressive season. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've been like talking to each of them in some capacity since. And yeah, like because of that third place IC finish, obviously Kofi got the nod. But yeah, I'm just like I see him share his insight on some matches, some team building questions, and like he came into this game as somebody who wanted to learn it, and he is coming so close to mastery. He has a lot of
Yes.
original thoughts that I think are a sign of somebody who really can dictate a game and potentially a whole tournament, just from that position of mastery. And yeah, therefore I think he's a fantastic candidate for this category specifically.
That's so hilarious to me that we allotted 3 picks for each of these other slots, and we
I,
had some
I
overlap,
thought you'd pick a
category to
North
category.
American.
No, come on, I'm not so limited.
Like I
But
was
no,
thinking of like Septilize or Stout Muffins, but I just thought like, okay, I'm the EU guy. I'll pick the EU guy. But
no, no. Subtile Ice would have been a good pick as well. I think Stud Muffins was solid last season too, so hard to say. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's much more I can add, but Kaifia is really nice. I had a chance to talk with him a little bit at EUIC. I get the same sentiment. Very, very kind person, willing to learn, eager to learn, excited to see what he does at Worlds. Our last pick here is going to be our world's favorite. And if we pick the same one for this, I'm really going to lose it.
I can already guarantee, like I can assure you that we haven't picked the same person because my pick is not only like a little more out there, nothing crazy, but something that you wouldn't expect, and also somebody that you mentioned already. So I know that there
Ah,
will be no overlap.
can I
Yeah.
guess who you picked?
Yes, please.
Marto.
I did not.
Okay.
I did
All right.
have Marto as one of my champions, so credit
Okay.
where credit is due. And
I thought you
obviously,
picked him
there,
twice.
yeah, like picking twice for especially this category, I think would be perfectly valid. And I
Yeah.
was considering that briefly, um, but I just have a gut feeling that the APAC region is going to come back with a vengeance this year. Um, and especially the East Asian trainers I'm expecting a lot of. And the most successful trainer from that general region as of recent, in my eyes, has been Charming Pori. Won a big grassroots tournament a couple months back, won the Korean qualifiers and playoffs. And then I think recently there has also been an APAC Champions tournament that
Hmm.
Charming Pori also won,
Beating
beating
Beelzeboy.
Beelzeboy in the finals. Exactly. And I think the guy's just been winning too much. And like
Yeah.
every new challenge, just taking it head on and coming out on top. And yeah, there's just like a lot of arguments in Charming Pori's favor. And obviously, this is somebody that we don't see as much. Like, we don't really have much to go by in terms of how we would rate the gameplay. But I think the success kind of speaks for itself. And I did want to go with maybe a more surprising selection. And I guess
Mm.
we'll see at Anaheim how surprising it's actually going to be.
I love that pick a lot. When we got to see Charming Bory play in the grassroots event, I believe it was Dez's tournament. We had Dez's tournament and Haydonis's tournament basically like back to back that one weekend. But I believe it was the Dez is the best cash prize tournament. When we got to see Charming Bory, what really stood out to me was this kind of eerie balance of very fast reaction time and also very patient gameplay. And I know that kind of sounds, like stock statement, but it was something about his ability to counter swap so fast, to adjust and pivot so quickly, but also to be patient and execute with Pokemon like Dugong that are obviously not fast paced Pokemon. And there's something very unique about Charming Pori's play. Maybe one could say he had quite a bit of aura going into those battles, but I would really love to see Charming Pori pop off. And I agree. I think the APAC and TPC region in particular is always very strong. I mean, Godon Hada, runner up in Worlds 2022. 2024, we had Yakai. I mean, APAC might be coming back. My world's favorite, I'm going to go a little bit NA bias here. I'm just going to say it, man. It's Elam. It's got to be Elam. I mean, I don't
It
know
would have been
anyone.
my pick if I was going for a double up in terms of my champions and world's favorites. Like
Yeah,
fifth place, your worst tournament of the season. Come on, come on,
yeah.
Elon.
He's so cracked. And I do think that the reduction in Shadow Drapian's viability is going to hurt him a little bit, but I'm very confident in Elam's ability to adjust. And going into Championship Sunday at NAIC, I thought he had a distinct team comp disadvantage, especially against Pato. But his ability to switch things around and find openings is just it's art. It's like art in motion when you watch Elam play. And he's got this blend of like calmness and coolness, but also this like gritty, relentless. gets stuck to your shoe and just will not come off. Elam is so persistent. It's honestly, it just, I don't, I can't think how to describe it.
I'm really feeling bad for like his first 5 or 6 opponents because you know he's not going to lose, right? Like
No,
that's just not something he does. And I don't know exactly how the seeding will work at Worlds, whether there will be any, but it's probably a lot more likely that you face a really heavy hitter. Like there's only top players at Worlds anyway, but there may be like champion on champion violence very early,
yeah,
and I do not want to be the person that has to go up against Elam like round two.
no, absolutely not. Elam to me is the kind of trainer that takes away your win conditions in such a way that it's almost like he's locking you in a box and throwing you in the ocean. And then when the series is over, he hits you with like a smirk and a shrug. He's like, "All right, yeah, man, GG's." So, but the whole time you feel so hopeless
It's
playing
very
against him.
graphic, but I kind of agree.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Elam's got what it takes, and I think his performance this season is finally matching this like inner fire that he's had for years. And we could see it, a couple years back when he was, top cutting every so often. But now it's really like his visualization of himself and his actual gameplay are actually much more aligned than they've ever been, which I think is really important. And it's always fun to see that story and that growth over the season. But ZZ, I think we've got some really impressive lists. We had some overlap here and there. Us both picking Kaifia as most improved. That was not something I expected, but very happy
This
with
wasn't
that.
planned, guys. This wasn't planned.
Not scripted at all. There's one more thing that I have in stock for us, and that is top rivalries. And maybe we can just, not glaze, but glance over this really quickly. Glaze has a new meaning, right? You could say glaze in the past, but now it's got a whole new interpretation. Uh, we'll just glance over this real quickly. What I wanted ZZ and I to try was to actually like pinpoint a rivalry from each region. I think a lot of ours will be the same. Some of them might be different. Let's just kick it off. NA, I think the top rivalry and the absolute fireworks that would ensue if these trainers matched up at Worlds would be Elam versus Pocket. I think you've got two trainers that are consistently top cutting over and over again, fighting back and forth for the crown of NA's best player, especially this season. I think Elam versus Pocket has kind of supplanted the Dune versus Rise rivalry that we saw last season.
I still feel as if, in terms of just rivalries, like players who really go up against each other a lot, Dune versus Rise still has to be the number one. It obviously has to, like, if Dune versus Rise happens like round three, it may not be that hype. But imagine the world's finals being Dune versus Rise.
Yeah,
This would be
true.
legendary. This would be one for the ages. Like, yeah, I really hope it happens at some place, at some point of the tournament.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, like obviously those like if there's Pocket versus Elam, that's probably the two strongest NA players of the season. Um, but I just feel as if it's there's more history to the other rivalries. So
fair.
I will go with that.
Okay. Okay. For EU, I think that there's no better rivalry, and I think it would absolutely pack the stadium if this was the event, especially late Saturday, Sunday morning, Championship Sunday. That's got to be Pato versus yours truly, Zzweilous. I
This
mean,
is
come on.
like I have not mentioned myself at all up until this point, but I think if we go for EU rivalries, I think they are very difficult to actually pinpoint as much, just because EU always feels like a region where a lot of trainers just enter the spotlight at any given point of the season.
Mhm.
So it's like very even, not that top heavy. But between Barcelona, EUIC, and NAIC, there just have been like too many really high stakes encounters. And I feel like I'm due another victory. I need to tie up the series, and I would love to do that at Worlds at some point. And
Yep.
if that's championship Sunday, I'm not going to say no to that.
All right. So you agree? Top rivalry right now, at least this season in this moment.
I would say so. I would
All
say
right.
so.
I agree. I will make sure that the script shows that you two are facing each other on Championship Sunday. You're welcome.
I
Um,
shall I shall play Pokemon script writer Speedy Chief. That's kind of all of it. Uh,
for LATAM, I think you and I are in agreement here in terms of our rivalry. You did some really good work looking at the matchups between the two. I think that if you look at LATAM, last season you think Harjev, this season you think Marto. Um, Harjev versus Marto would also be an absolute blockbuster. The LATAM trainers going crazy in the stands is something I can already visualize and hear. Just imagining it would be so hype. I mean, this has to be it. This has to be the premium rivalry, right?
yeah, like this season, Rajev eliminated Mato on his way to winning Joinville early in the season. Whereas in Santiago, it was Marto who got the better of Rajev, took him down in Nuna's finals. There wasn't a rematch because losers finals went to Javier V20 as a
Mm-hmm.
very strong Latin contender. But yeah, I think that like that Brazil Argentina rivalry, that's like a big thing in soccer as well. And
Yeah.
I just feel as if those countries are always like they have a very healthy basis of competition, and yeah, two giants of the scene that I would definitely agree are currently um the top rivalry to pick. Um, what APAC rivalry can you even think of? That is one that I did struggle with.
Yeah, this feels like something that's probably more private, and that if you're actually in the, for example, Japanese community, you probably know a bit more about these rivalries, or the South Korean community, or even India, right, is another good example. Like I could pencil in like two good players from each region. I could say like Beelzeboy versus Master Mihir, or I could say Kesarn versus Salted Koji, or you could go any way you want. This one was really tough. I kind of sheeped out on this one. I know this might frustrate some people to listen to, but for me, I just lumped APAC and OC together, and I said OC versus anyone from Japan. This is like Godzilla and Elcal versus Choose and Poke Moneymaker. I mean, this is like, how else do you
I
describe
love
it?
that. I love that you put El Calvissimo, who is American, into the Australia bucket as well. So
Oops.
this is almost Strayer catching strays. Oh man. Um,
Oops.
but yeah, we did talk about that briefly as well yesterday. That yeah, like the real battle is between the Aussies and the invaders. So
Yeah, I
um,
think so.
yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah, I think I'll just I don't I did note down like Charming Pori versus Charming Poem because that's like
Ah, it's a good one.
another like rivalry between like I would suppose like teammates. It feels like a LNES type name convention.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's like especially because like in some way, even though Oceania does fall under TPCI and they're not like exactly equal, like at least they share time zones. They're fairly close to each other, which is why there's so many Japanese battlers at Aussie tournaments. I think like if you were to lump them together into like a continental tournament, there's no OCIC anymore, but yeah,
Yeah.
like an APAC International Championships, I feel like the Aussies would belong to that a little bit. I feel like they're adjacent enough.
Mhm. Yeah. Something that's also useful is if you look at trainers who have qualified for Worlds multiple seasons from South Korea or Japan or India, and you compare them to, are they still competing? Are they still active? Are they, competing currently? That kind of thing. And there are some similarities. I think K-Sarn is one of the trainers from Japan who's actually been near the top of GBL leaderboards, but also has qualified for Worlds at least twice, if not all three times. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we need our Japan correspondent, not Rob May, to go and ask some of the Japanese trainers who the biggest rivalries are in the community, because I'm curious. But yeah, It's one of those things. I wish we had streams, Easy. I wish we had streams for these Japanese qualifiers. I wish we could sneak a camera into the Pokemon Center and watch these players actually battle to qualify for the remote playoffs and that kind of stuff. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, I just wish there was more willingness from TPC to integrate with TPCI a little bit, because
Fair.
I think that what is happening, especially like in Europe and NA, where there is the stream setup, it's like kind of a best practice situation, and I just wish we could get everybody to that same standard where you have essentially every major event streamed with dedicated commentators and everything. But yeah, maybe sometime in the future, like the scene is still evolving, still growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess yeah, we're heading into the 2026 season fairly soon. There will probably be some announcements as to what changes within Pokemon Go at the World Championships, but we've already heard of some of the changes, like we alluded to it earlier, with more qualification slots for LATAM and EU. We've heard of some new locations. A lot of them are fairly similar to what we had last season already, but there are some exciting new additions. For example, Las Vegas will be getting its own regional. In Europe, we're
Mhm.
getting a Prague regional, which I'm excited to visit as well. So there are changes coming to the series again. And yeah, maybe there'll be some bigger picture ones as well. But I also like I wonder whether that will happen after the 30th anniversary of the franchise as well, which is coming up next
Mm.
year.
Yeah, 2026 is going to be a crazy, crazy season. I've heard rumors, rumblings, whispers in the wind, if I may, that the 2025 season is really just setting the groundwork for something really huge in 2026. So we'll see. I mean, this is a big year for Pokemon Go coming up, a big year for Pokemon as a brand. And we've already seen Niantic slash Scopely investing more in the game. We've got a brand new overlay for the World Championships this year, which is going to be really cool. So you're not staring at a patch of grass when you battle. You actually are in a stadium, in an arena. And I just want to take this moment on the platform that I have to shout out to Pogo Doms for creating the artwork over 2 years ago now, I think, of the stadium and what it could look like. I honestly think that seeing that visual aid might have, I don't know, but it might have pushed Niantic to actually work with their art department to create something like that to show them what's possible, because it is such a huge upgrade and it is just like a map change. You get different maps on any other game. Why don't we get different maps in PvP? But yeah, there are some pretty exciting things. But ZZ, we've run through the meta, we've run through the players. I think the only thing really left to do is talk about the events for Worlds and to wish everyone the best. I mean, is there anything else that you want to discuss?
I think those were two fairly eventful hours. There was not even anything to recap. It was just like really digging into it. Yeah, I think I've essentially said everything that I wanted to say. And yeah, I
Okay.
guess we can move towards the Worlds event, and especially the Shadow event that will start the Monday of Worlds Week.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's actually the one I wanted to highlight the most because Niantic slash Scopely are so gracious as to allow players to TM away frustration on their shadows just before the World Championships. And I definitely think there was a world, not no pun intended. There was just a scenario in which this event would be held until September or held until the third month of the upcoming season, and it was moved up to the second week of August, which I think is really big. So I'm excited for that. I will say with a huge asterisk here that your new shadows like Shadow Chargebug, Shadow Talonflame, Shadow Staryu, Starmie, whatever, those Pokemon will not be eligible due to the 2 week cooldown rule that's now in effect for competitive Pokemon. So you can catch them. You can catch your Shadow Fletchinders, catch your Shadow Staryus, whatever you like, but they will not be eligible for tournament play, which is a little bit of a bummer. Would have loved to see them mix up the meta. I'm not sure if you looked at The Sims already, Zzweilous, but I feel like the Shadow Chargebug has the most potential out of the ones that I reviewed personally.
I did have a brief look at The Sims, but I do want to be cautious with any analysis, because it will only really be relevant for tournaments happening from like September onward, really.
Mm.
And we may see another meta shakeup. The last time it was announced at Worlds, and that was essentially like one of the most hype moments of the weekend. So I'm really holding
Yeah.
out for another instance of that. Um, but yeah, I think Charger Bug is going to be worth getting. I think Talonflame is going to be worth getting. And I also think that you should go out and defeat Giovanni so you can
Mm.
rescue Giratina Altered, or you can stop halfway through rescuing it and not actually purify it. Because as a purified version, it would be too big for Great League, whereas I think as
Mm.
a shadow, you will be able to use it in 1500 CP formats.
I love that Inadequance posted about it, and he just said it's so over for you all. Once he gets his Shadow Giratina,
uh,
Giratina Altered.
yeah,
I should be more specific.
I love to see Martine cast things, but I do hope that he competes at some more events next season as well, because he
Mm.
always runs wacky stuff, and I like when people run wacky stuff.
Yeah, me too. He's one of the most exciting team builders, and does lean a little bit into the RPS aspects of the game, more so than others. But I do think it does deliver a very exciting show. So for the World Championships, we've got an event from the 15th through the 17th. I believe this is also the same as Go Battle Weekend. You're going to get a T-shirt with the Anaheim artwork. Pokemon debut. It's going to be Pikachu wearing a varsity jacket. We always get a Pikachu every year. I've actually had to like parse down my inventory of stored event Pikachu's. I think I'm down to 21 from each Worlds. So 21 Beefeater Pikachu's, 21 Yokohama jerseys, 21 Snorkel Chews. Now I'm going to have to pick up 21 Letterman jacket Pikachu's. Something exciting about this event is that we're going to get Hone Edge in 1-star raids. So if you only got a couple of them or a handful of them in the last event, you will have a chance to get more. We're going to get Lapras in 3 stars, which is viable. Field research is also going to include Hone Edge, which is actually really really cool. I like that a lot. It's amazing that we during our break, Hone Edge came out and we have not even talked about Aegislash. That's actually
That is true.
amazing.
Like, it also speaks to how like weird the Aegislash situation has been and kind of still
Yeah,
is currently.
I
But yeah,
agree.
it's a unique Pokemon to say the least.
You will be able to learn some featured attacks on your Pokemon. So if you evolve Lapras during this event, you will get Ice Beam, which is a legacy move. Primeape and Annihilate would both gain Rage Fist. So if you've got a good Mankey in the interim since the Community Day and you don't want to use an Elite TM, you can use it there. And also, the biggest news of all, Clodsire can learn Mega Horn, which is, just a revolutionary
I
thing.
do wonder how Lapras is going to work because it is not a thing that you evolve into. Is it
True.
just upon catching, or is it something that you can just freely TM?
Good
I
point. It
don't know
says
how that is going to work.
Yeah, you make a really good point. It says certain Pokemon encountered during the event. And
Mm.
then in the next phase, it says for the Rage Fist variants and for the Clodsire, it says certain Pokemon evolved during the event.
So it would
So,
make sense to load up on Ice Beam Laprases during the event to maybe do low friendship trades and save a friend an Elite TM.
exactly. Exactly right. So, I'm glad you pointed that out. That's a really good catch. If you want, you can go on the webpage and you can watch a Frost Breath Lapras throw a 0 charge Skull Bash into a Suicune in the new Battle Arena, which is
Oh.
definitely an interesting choice. But I think I share the sentiment with everyone else. I just hope that the new graphic load on the battle screen while playing does not affect the latency of the game. That's my big hope.
That would be lovely.
That would be ideal, is if everything ran smoothly, right? That's what we hope for. But
Mm.
anyways, between the takeover event where you can TM shadows and the championship world championships event, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with the event, a lot of gameplay. I'm really excited for World ZZ. I know it's been a bit of a longer episode, but honestly, I feel like this is one of our best ones we've done. I feel like we offered a lot of insights. I'm curious where the meta will go. I hope that trainers that are unsure about the meta find their footing in the days leading up to Worlds. And I'm ready for a good show.
I'm very unsure about the meta, just personally, but I'm
Yeah.
very excited to just end that hiatus to start traveling again to these events. I'm very fortunate and grateful that I get to have that opportunity. Um, yeah, I love that afterwards it's going to be fast paced again and not another
Yeah.
2 month break.
Yeah.
Because I will be in Frankfurt, I will be in Pittsburgh. I know that I'll be in Gdansk as well. Let's see about Lille. That's not a certainty just yet.
Mm.
But yeah, it's definitely kicking it up a notch from September onwards. And yeah, I guess Worlds is first, but it won't be the end. It will just be the start of something new that will follow just after.
Interesting. Well, I'm gonna ease your uncertainty here a little bit about Worlds. I just want you to know this because I was doing a little bit of research about the city of Anaheim and I came across something interesting. Anaheim's name is a blend of Anna, named after the nearby Santa Ana River, and the German Heim, meaning home. So River Home is where you're going to be playing the World Championships, ZZ. So you got to lock in. You got to do it. It's meant to be. It's fate, like we discussed.
True. Okay, okay. I'll just treat it like my battles at home that I play after midnight, just mindlessly tapping through GBA.
There you go. There you go. You'll be
uh,
totally locked in. But all right, my friend,
exactly.
it's been a great episode. It's been good to get back into it, and I'm excited to see you at Worlds. I'm excited to kick off the next season. But man, this World Championships is going to go crazy. In arena for the grand finals, uh, man,
Uh,
it's going to be
it's going to be a
special.
fantastic time. It's going to be great television. Yeah, like glad to see people that I don't otherwise see as much as well. It's always a great time to just talk to the international player base that we do have. And yeah, I'm excited. I'll start my vacation 2 days from the recording of this episode. So a
Nice.
little early, but this is exactly what we need. So
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
I agree. Got to get in the mindset. And also, if you are at the World Championships and you enjoy the Show 6 podcast, walk up to us and let us know. I hope more people talk to me than ZZ because then that will be a great reversal because
They've
everyone
been really
tells,
good about talking to me. This is like, I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe
everyone.
they're intimidated because you're like this big official person. Like,
No, come on. Everyone tells ZZ how good the show is, and I've had a handful of people approach me about it, and I'm always really really grateful when you do say kind things about the show. So if you enjoy it, let us know. Leave us a review as well. ZZ, it's been a great episode. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you actually literally next week.
it is true. I'm very excited.
Wow. All right, my friend. It's been great. See you very soon, and good luck to all of our world's competitors. May the best champion win it all.